This is Asteria and Oshi. We are here today with TWI Talks ACD to tackle chapters 8.83 all the way through to the epilogue, the end, the finale of Volume 8, a year and a half in the making, so to speak. You have your drinks and your snacks ready because we are digging in. So, starting us out with general impressions on this chapter.
You mean chapters?
Chapters. You're gonna have to catch me on that. It's multiple chapters, 86,000 words over 4 chapters. So general impressions. I'll go ahead and start off. This was what I was hoping for, and I wasn't sure we were going to get it because we were rushing through all the different plot lines. But this is actually what I did want to see wrapping up Volume 8. I was so happy to see all the plot lines coming together. We got so many nods to different characters that we've been getting to know and love throughout Volume 8, and pretty much everybody made it. So excited. We had some limb loss, but pretty much everybody made it. My favorite scene in particular were 2 of my favorite characters, with Jacana and Relt. They were coming through in the clutch, showing up Floss with his little sword fighting gig, and just really being a key part of ending the Knoll Moot and ending the horror of the White Knolls. So happy to see the development on those characters and cannot wait to see what other places they go. But there were just so many great scenes wrapping up and combining all these plot lines, and I think it was quite masterfully done. I was very pleased with these chapters, and I'll turn it over to Rosie for what she thought.
I really loved these chapters. I was so lucky to be able to just sit down and take it all in. And I found the Mersha hot potato sequence eminently entertaining in what was, albeit a very intense scene. I thought it was pulled off so well. I kept expecting to be annoyed by the situation of her constantly being handed off to another rescue party, but it just felt so fun and so wandering in that I think it worked just really well. And I cannot pinpoint exactly why it didn't become tiring, but I really loved that. And I felt it was a great way to have all of these parties interact and show how chaotic this scene had become in the essence of, everything just kind of going everywhere all the time. So I just thought it was really delightful, and maybe it wasn't as serious as people wanted, but I think that's what made it a really great ending to this part of the Wandering Inn.
I would definitely agree with that. Having Misha football being passed around was a way to sort of connect between all these different characters and sort of show their petty little squabbles while trying to rescue one kid. The child, as people kept repeating over and over again. Kel calls Misha the Infinity Gauntlet, and that is quite true. She was a little chaotic trying to follow what was going on with her, but I would agree that she kind of, as the connector, was actually quite nice, and yeah, it was fun to read. Oshi, did you have any thoughts about the sort of general impressions of the chapter?
Not exactly. I've been trying to absorb what other people's reactions are, so I read a lot of the Reddit thread and things. There's a kind of divided, weird step, but okay, let me take a step back. There's a divided level of reaction to it. Generally, people are like, yay, great, the volume's over, it was a great journey, thank you so much, Papa. But there's a distinct feeling of dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the 4-part ender.
Really? How so?
Yeah. So what I noticed was that they, or at least from the Reddit threads, there was pushback against the, okay, I have no idea how to make this nice, the fan fiction ending, quote unquote, because it felt like the aspects of how the ending was structured was too pat, or to force the horns being swiped out of Chandra and transported to Israel. Fedorheb kind of clearing the decks in terms of plot lines really fast. The resurrection of Teriarch, the neat, everything gets tied into a bow. There was also criticism of the arrival of, this is not me, I'm just reading this stuff. There was also criticism of the arrival of Kelt in Israel being, not a super useful thing. It's sort of shoehorned in. They don't necessarily have to be there. There not being any significant character deaths, yet there being a lot of deaths again. What was the other thing? Right, and the fact that you're not going to like this part. Jasena actually was used to unravel the daemon of luck when it should have been something of a solution that the Nulls themselves found. And it felt a lot like the Ghost Nulls arrived and they did this huge thing, but the Nulls in general didn't really do a whole lot. They just sort of survived or left. That's all it was.
Yeah, let's break some of this down because
Hang on. Can I give my opinion?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So that was a lot of chatter that I was hearing. And aside from that, there just is some kind of muted. It feels muted. Like there's either people are overwhelmed or they're complaining about specific things. And I'm not getting a really good, like, usually after a chapter is done, I get, even a long one, I get a general impression of where things are and people feel comfortable. I'm not getting that. And maybe it's me, but there it is. For me personally, I was part of the group that was asked to, like, beta read after Pirate was completely done with it, so we could do typos and stuff. So I had a little bit of an early start when it comes to reacting to the chapter, and I got to see some of the changes Pirate made. And personally, I thought it was a lot, but it was good and it did its job. It was a very, very functional chapter and it hit a lot of high points. And I really did have like tears in my eyes at the very end and chills when I saw the last bit with Bellavere. Honestly, she's such a scary bitch. I just loved it. And then there is a serious argument to be made with my dissatisfaction with two things. One is the fact that Terriarch felt, after such a huge build-up, not a huge presence in the last chapter. And the second part is that I'm not a fan of amnesia plotlines or memory plotlines at all. And and I don't like this one, especially because it erases, or at least implies, that there is an erasure of his current memories, including Magnolia, and that's...
Oh, you mean with Terry, not Aaron?
Yes, with Terry, yes. The Aaron's, it was always going to be a fake out. I could not see the plot moving forward with any kind of memory shenanigans with her. And I forgot, there's a huge amount of dissatisfaction with Aaron not gaining like super levels and stuff. Okay. And I'm like, maybe that's
Let's start to break down some of this because there's a lot. There's a lot to talk about here, and maybe we kind of focus our discussion on how people felt about the different sections that you kind of presented. So Comrade Burv kind of shares first that they think that sometimes plot lines get run over by bigger plots. You can't really expect Pirate to make a contained story to each and every plot line. There's going to be overlap sometimes, and sometimes a bigger force like Fedorhep doing Paul Rebnitz's ride to protect the world and help Aaron just drags other pipelines along in its wake. Terriarch should have probably been more relevant. Definitely must have him fight the largest Seamwalker, right, to come through. The Seamwalkers, I would agree, did seem to kind of be like this big threat, and then they were like a nothing threat in the wake of Aaron reviving. I would agree there. The Seamwalkers kind of disappeared as a threat, but maybe they're a future threat down the line. Eduron agreed, actually sort of said, hey, like, stuff happened I didn't even know I needed it in my life, just pure epicness. I thought that the three-way fight before the end was crazy. It was just that times 1,000.
Do you have a mic? Do you mind, like, talking a little bit about what it felt like for you when you were reading the chapter?
Me or Eduron?
Ed.
Okay, yes. Eduron. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, for me, it was, like I said, I binged everything at once because I know I couldn't go to bed. And at first, how to describe it? For me, to be honest, it was, like I said, most because it was mostly a fighting chapter. It was pure, a bit too much chaos with Mirsha getting tossed around here and there. It was really hot potato. So sometimes I had to maybe pause a bit and think, okay, what exactly just happened? Because it really was pure chaos
Mm.
with all that jumping around. But in the end, many things happened. Pirate is always good at making certain stuff or making scenes that you just won't forget, or just like I said, it's all often just small stuff like a team up between Lionette and the King of Destruction.
The new
I mean,
ship
that's
sails. Sorry, I agree with you. I fully agree with you. When I saw that, I was like, "Ah, new ship, let's go!"
yes, Pawn.
Oh my
But
god, the Pond Lynette reunion. Oh, that's gonna be. Oh, oh man, that's
but
long in coming. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
yeah, it's small stuff like this. And I am happy with the end. I'm still not sure if I like the whole body snatching plot line in the end,
What do you mean
because
body snatching?
yeah, the whole Aaron getting possessed by
Oh, yeah, by Saris?
There's
Okay.
by
the
yeah,
general.
because I don't know, it made the aftermath made is a bit too. I mean, what is everybody thinking now when I see Aaron? So it's a bit awkward for the future in my head.
Mm.
She was kicking people around the battlefield, fighting like a super soldier, and everybody's supposed to forget that she's now just an inn. I mean, she's more than just an innkeeper. She's now the speaker of the dead over witch or something.
Well,
But
edit.
still,
You know what it means. It just means that her legend grows, right? She splits blood from her crotch, and she, like,
yeah,
is the creator of sports, and like, I think it just builds to her. I think you're right. Like, she's gonna have to contend with what Sarah did with her body, but I think it just her legend is growing,
So
and
not
we're just gonna get some
all.
funny nods.
the jump is maybe like a bit too much. Even I mean,
Mm.
what she did, she lost an arm, grew it back. It was she made a goddamn superhero landing.
Yes, she did. So, sorry, but I wanted to do the next person's because we're trying to shove this
Hmm.
along. Soul Scriber says, fascinating, Oshi. I thought Terriarch was trying to purposefully lean back from Eldavin's too much activeness. Terry's focusing on what's important and was one of the critical pieces in reviving Aaron. It's a lot. I wasn't contending with the logic of his decision making, just the thematic dissonance between the end of one of the prior sequence being Teriarch the Dragon Lord of Flame flies out of his cave. That's a symbolically important moment. And
We
then
did,
you have and
and the
then
last. Go ahead.
and then you have Teriarch just slipping into the battlefield, burning Bellavere, and then his burn being, okay, I'm burned, I'm going to fight you, blah, blah, blah. And she's immediately snuffed food by the witches, and then he goes and helps revive Aaron, just like he said he would, which is great.
So
Also,
maybe.
Solace Scriber said something in general chat very
Mhm.
quickly. So they said, for me, the only critique was the cheap feeling of Terry being immediately revived. When he died, I was honestly flabbergasted. I love the chapters overall. It was great. So that we did discuss before, so I'm not going to bring it. But I thought that was
Okay.
also like it fed into that Terry seems to be like off to the side feeling.
Well, maybe what would have helped with the Terry situation is because we ended the last cluster of chapters with Terry, starting the next cluster of chapters with Terry, like instead of wherever we started, it all kind of runs together. Opening with
Started
Terry,
with the
right?
nukes.
Yeah, so opening the next cluster, right, 8.83, if we opened with Terry burning Bellavere and then circled back through the other scenes, like, how did we get here? Why is the witch burning? Right? Maybe it's just a matter of presentation of events and just
Yeah.
coming at them in the right order.
I mean, the order made sense from the perspective of how to get the.
It did, but maybe just changing it where Terry seems a bit more relevant, right? And rather than him just showing up on the battlefield and burning the witch, like start with that and be like, why is Terry burning the witch? Like he was just flying out of his cave, and then kind of circle back through to that with how we got to there. Just changing up the order of events might help with that. It's just my thought.
Maybe. I think Terry will be a significantly more present in Volume 9. I hope so, because at this point, if he
He's
isn't,
alive, hopefully.
yeah, it is going to be weird. Ranarus, you want to speak?
Real quickly, let's just wrap up some of the other impressions. Verve ended with thinking that the chapters were sort of a big cluster F.
You didn't
But
read
not
all of Burr's comment?
Yes, I am, but not necessarily in a bad way at all. There were a lot of things going on, but I think it really gave the feel of a massive bar fight where everyone is running into each other and hitting each other in the crossfire. We have some characters that are definitely good. Some are definitely bad, like Plains Eye trying to kill civilians and Drake's trying to kill civilians or Belge trying to kill civilians. But there was also a lot that fell in the middle, like Kablitch and Morvir. It sort of had a loose wandering in feel to it. But there's still breaks for serious moments. So like the Raga Shar with the Null mood. So, and I think with Burv, like the reason I really emphasize with Burv is that I think that this is true. There were so many nods to everything that had happened in Volume 8 that unless you had read Volume 8 in its entirety and remembered those moments, it might have seemed like these last cluster of chapters was just a mess. But if you remember, like I actually reread all of Volume 8 just before this came out because I was like, probably going to need to know it, and I'd skimmed a lot of it. So I read back through it actually in the last couple weeks in detail, and there's so many nods to little moments that happened throughout Volume 8, and it really helped put the last few chapters in place. And that's what I
Via
love.
Volume 8? Sorry,
Yes,
sorry.
it's okay.
God.
The entirety of Volume 8. Yes, I have read it. Finally. So DM Craft thinks that Seamwalkers are less of a threat, more of a catalyst to force everyone's hands to act, which is in nod to like why were Seamwalkers kind of so weak here at the end. Mr. Europe said that when they read the chapter, they legitimately had to go inside because they looked like a madman sitting on the porch and laughing themselves for over 10 minutes while stopping while reading. And many people agree with it and also like the chapter. Great Cube says that Saren's possession of Aaron it's meant to be awkward. It increases her myth. There's even a comment about her striding like Ilveris and what that's what people are gonna remember. Comrade Burr says, we're probably gonna get more reactions as people go forward and kind of understand and let the chapter settle. So circling back to Ranos, please share your general impressions after hearing all this.
Yeah, I would say I like this set of 3 chapters plus the epilogue a lot more than last set of 3 chapters. Because I felt like the last set of 3 chapters was just like it was still all over the place. Except it was like half the characters I didn't care about at all. Like we had like the whole Sprigania plotline, and I was just like, I don't care about this character at all. And it was a lot more like, oh, now we're in the Deadlands, and now we're not in the Deadlands. So, I felt like this set of chapters was like, yes, it was that chaotic wandering in feel, but it was all these characters that I actually cared about. Like, we had the horns, they didn't do as much, but we finally got to see Fleethoof, who's been getting built up for quite a while.
Oh yeah, for a horn.
We got to see the herd mistress of the plains, who also has been getting built up for quite a while, right? So, and people were saying, "Oh, the Chandra people didn't do anything," and I was just kind of like, "Well, I mean, I don't know how important they were, but we got to see Eris. We got to see like the Fetoheb just going all out, chucking a giant like halberd at a tower. So I felt like maybe you could argue No should have done more and maybe Jasina shouldn't have been the one to solve the Damon Love Luck thing, but I mean, I thought it was fine, right? It's like there was a lot of these characters that we knew that could have an impact, and I think we got to highlight some of these characters that we'd been building up but hadn't seen yet. And I thought that was fine. And ultimately, I think the reason why the people from Chandra helped the Knolls is because right at the end of the epilogue, they were saying, hey, all those ships from Chandra were filled with Knolls who were going there now. So I think there's a that's kind of like important symbolism where it's like Jasina helped them out. I could see a lot of no's going to Jackgrass now, right?
Yeah.
And kind of having that tie to Jackgrass, where the Knolls were sympathetic to loss, which is something we learned. I mean, really early on, right? Like the whole Floss declared war on just the Drakes, not the Knolls. He was sympathetic to the Knolls. There was the Knolls who went to him in Volume 7. So I think now, I think Jackgrass has kind of been this foil to Rhyme, where Rel, is pretty good in combat, but he wasn't willing to go be Floss in terms of, I'm just going to raise everything I have. Jasina is a lot more diplomatic. So I think they're probably going to take on some Knolls, and there's going to be maybe some interesting plotline there between Jackgrass and Rhyme, and kind of Floss trying to consolidate his power in that in that region. So I think it was actually good setup for Volume 9 in that regard.
You're speaking to my heart.
Overall, just a lot of really fun moments. I liked Ciceris. I mean, it's like we finally got to see this dude, right? This has been getting built up to be like this end all be all. And I mean, he stuck a superhero landing, so got something going for him. And then I loved there were so many small moments. I will say, for no perspective, Torishi was like way cooler than I thought. I mean, like over the last like 6 to 10 chapters, she's just like been climbing in terms of awesome. It's kind of sad that she ended up the way she did, but I guess she would have been too easy of a solution in terms of who's gonna lead the Knolls next. I think with Zherku basically being out of the picture, Torishi was like next in line. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, we had a lot of plot lines wrapped up, and it's sort of the section of chapters that spawned 1,000 more, so to speak. Oshi, just before, I'm just gonna sort of react. So I agree with you. We had so many nods to so many different characters, and I think this is what really made it for everybody, is you got a nod to almost every character that we've seen over the last volume. Maybe parts kind of felt shoehorned in. With regard to Fedo feeling shoehorned in, and Oshi, I'm actually interested to hear your opinion on this, as well as other people. Please chime in. Would it have made more sense with Fedo showing up if he had sort of reacted to knowing that Aaron's body was headed to Nolmute? Like, if he knew that Aaron's body was headed to Nolmute, and he's like, oh, to bring her back, we have to go get her body. And so he's not just showing up to resolve the threat to the Knolls and Mishra, but he's showing up to being like, all right, we've got to res Aaron, and the only way to do that is to go get her body. Would that have added more legitimacy to him showing up? Anyway, go ahead.
I'm gonna clarify something. The logic of the chapter was not in contention, at least not for me.
Mm-hmm.
The events laid out worked the way they were supposed to. Pirate did a very good job threading that needle, in my opinion. It was more about the feel, the tone, and the establishment and scope of each character arc that was occurring. You create the impression I got anyway. You created this very large series of cascading arcs. I called it the domino effect last time we had this discussion when we were doing the whole other chapter. And Pirate started the dominoes falling all over each other, except the vehicle used was Kelt to pull everybody in, and above Kelt was the Seamwalkers and the Deadlands. So everything worked in a logical sense. What didn't work necessarily was the satisfaction level, I think, with the way the various plot lines intersected with each other. So going back to the horns being like pulled into Israel, and then there's just plenty of arguments. Again, it makes sense logically. There isn't a lot for them to do. They got their friends to relative safety in Pomley. There's plenty of stuff left to do, but it doesn't necessarily require the presence of the horns for those plot lines to progress.
But the horns, I don't think they meant to be there anyway, right? They had their own stuff that they were dealing with. It was Fedo coming through and being like, all right, who can I grab? All right, I'm grabbing you, you, and you, because Aaron said you were important, and we're headed out. Like,
that's kind of no, that's not why. He chose the horns explicitly because Aaron chose the horns and because he's aware that they're powerful enough and invested enough to be trusted with the information Fedo has and to do the things he needs them to do, because the rest of the people he's bringing along don't really necessarily have a connection to Aaron. He
I agree with
needs
you,
a
OC.
group of adventurers who can track them down, and he picked the horns. Why not?
Right. No, I agree with you, and I think that was his reason. But people are kind of being like, "All right, well, they were." So let's get into the horns discussion. Did they really do anything where they needed? No, they were effectively useless on the battlefield. They were not necessary, I would argue. But the reason that they were there is just like you said. Fedo pulled in who he thought was needed, who was necessary, and so the horns came with them. Like I think that's it. Yeah, whoever wants to react to that.
And I also a ping, sorry.
Ed, did you want to react?
Yes. In the end, I guess it's the horns are even though they are strong with the forces that fought in that battlefield. I think the horns, they were small fries. I mean, I think we once talked about the scale of power and that small people like didn't really matter in the large scale, and in the end this was a fight. This was a named fight in the end, and I don't know what people like the horns. I mean, they're strong, don't get me wrong, but the magic that was thrown around and the people who fought, I don't know, what the horns didn't really matter in the end, I guess. I
Oh,
mean,
but
the real fight.
it makes
The
sense
real
why they were there.
Yeah, it made sense because they were there. I think Oshi said it quite correctly, but I also think that it wouldn't really had changed that much if they were not there, because what was important is that people and forces were there who could fight Bellevere, because if they don't would have been there, she would have just annihilated everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, we found out.
Hang on. I think we're getting a little sidetracked because I was using the horns as an example of the plotline dissonances. I wasn't trying to bring up the horns as something critiquable at this moment because they really weren't the point of the epilogue, right? I mean, sorry, the last chapters. Can I read a bunch of these people's comments
Go
before we go?
into people's reactions.
Okay,
But start with Renault's. We'll circle back to Jacana and Rel in a minute.
Sorry, what now?
Start with Ranaroos. We'll circle back to Comrade Burv through Comrade Burv in a minute.
Where is Rana? He says Pisces is the MVP. What? I'm not sure what the hell you're saying.
Okay, so he's reacting, right? I'm saying that the horns were effectively useless, and they're correcting me, saying Pisces was an MVP, right? That the horns actually needed to be there because Pisces, yeeted a god. Tammy, I think he killed Tammy, was it?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna read the reactions. I have no clue where you're. Sorry. Comrade Burv says there were a lot of highlights with Aaron's reunion, but I think a really nice moment was Relk finally getting someone coming back from the edge of death after we find out how many times he's hoped and been let down for that very thing before. I didn't, Mr. Europe says, I didn't mind just solving the Null Damon problem, but I'm very happy that Nulls were the ones who killed Noka. if Burv says again, if Jasena just stabbed it and made it go away, I think that would be one bad thing. But the fact that she was able to pass judgment makes it more powerful. Jasena and Whiskeria friendship one day. Ranner says Pisces MVP. Comrade Burv, yeah, don't gloss over the fact that Pisces marked an actual god. Okay, but was it necessary for him to mark it, or could anyone have done it? Kel says tripping over each other on serious battlefield, just getting up and going was peak horns. Absolutely, I love that bit, especially when the pirate ship got, flipped over. That was hilarious. Grit Cube goes, there was so much power in the battle that not even Flos mattered that much. There was literally a line that said nobody give a shit about Flos. I love that. It spoke to me. My soul was healed. Thank you. That's my one
That's
compliment
true.
for the day for Pirate Abba. Thank you for that line.
That's so true.
Coldbringer says, I just wonder how many levels and what weird ass skills Pisces gets for taking Tamarat's avatar. Jump straight to level 47. Godbane Necromancer or something. I don't think so. It was a vessel, not the god themselves, right? And there's plenty of vessels around. Mr. Europe goes, in the end, the horns needed to be back because they needed to meet Erin when she woke up. No, she didn't. No, they didn't. That's the crux of the critique from all the randos on Reddit and the occasional bits on the Discord is that there was no lot. There was plenty of reasons they would want to be there, but that narratively speaking, they were unnecessary.
Right, but that's the disagreement, right? Where it's like, well, actually, narratively, it does make sense because Fetto grabbed them, and
Yeah, Fetto
there's
grabbed
legit
them
reason for
for.
why he grabbed them.
Fetto didn't necessarily need to grab them as the thing. Okay, but let me finish Mr. Europe's comment. It was a. Excuse me. In the end, the horns needed to be back because they needed to meet Erin when she woke up. It was a bit of a contrivance to get them back, but I don't really care. Yes, it was heartwarming. Redditors are dumb. Grid Cube is Fetto didn't have all the information, so he covered all the corners he could. Soul Scriber says, I thought Pisces killing Tammy was thematically appropriate because he did the one thing that came to mind for him, snapping the spooky skeleton's neck, just like how he made Torn by being almost naively simple-minded and keeping the mind blank. Unlike all the smarter, more experienced mages before him, he outsmarted Fetohep, the king of Kelt, with a simple snap instead of using the giant halberd. Was Fetto striking down? I don't remember him having to deal with.
No, Fetto wasn't dealing with the god. When did Pisces face off against Fetto?
No, he's saying whatever Pisces did was smarter than what. Oh, Fetto was punching Tammy with the rest, was he? I don't remember.
No.
I remember him ordering that it be taken down, but I don't remember him punching.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. Well, okay, well, the three people are disagreeing with us, so apparently.
I know he was fighting the possessed undead, and he ordered everybody to take it down, and then snap. I don't remember exactly the sequence beyond that. Okay.
All right, well, I am Tamroth, and I have and then Fetto leapt upon the dead god, and his halberd swung out with the weight of Celts. Oh, and then
Yeah, but
Pisces
that's what
snapped
I
the
meant
neck instead.
works, right? Oh no, that's right. Then
Didn't
they
work,
fought.
yeah.
Yeah, then they fought.
We're
Yeah. Okay.
trapped. Rat beating us at our own game.
Okay.
To wrap out, okay. To wrap up the Celt sort of plot line, Mel has this to say: when we were first introduced to Celt, they were considered a nobody in the greater world of the Wandering End. I would disagree with that. I think people just forgot about them. Nations on Trandor knew Celt, but forgot what they could do. Now the whole world understands who and what Celt is. How will this affect Celt as a nation and necromancers in general? Lucivio, the leader of Manus, called out for necromancers to save stairs. That would have never happened before Celt landed on Israel.
Why
So
don't
I
we
think.
wrap? Okay,
Go
hang on.
ahead.
Before you finish that up, and then we just wrap up
Yeah.
general impressions. I got two
So,
topics, and then we're good to go for the rest of the thing for cult
yeah.
questions.
So I think this wraps up Celt. I think we see the start of a new nation for Celt, right? All the previous kings and queens are dead. Feddo is alone in the chain of command, and we've got a new era for Kelt coming. They burned through a lot of their craft, but they now have connection to Aaron, so we're going to sort of see Kelt on the world stage now, which will be quite interesting. And then Uteron says that Kelt was one of the paradises, right? They always mentioned, yeah, they're known worldwide. I think people just forgot about their power. But yeah, so Feddo on the battlefield, he may not have been necessary at the end, but I think he had a good reason to be there. So him being there narratively makes sense to me. That wraps up for general impressions. We'll get into some of the specifics, but I think overall here, people really appreciated the chapters and loved them. Maybe just the order of things and specific parts were a bit confusing. Oshi, what's the next topic you wanted to jump into?
Well, let's trade off. You do the second one, I'll do the first one.
Sure, because I know which one I want to get into.
Yeah, so you'll do the first one. Okay. So, the primary topic I wanted to talk about here was the Drake versus Null conflict.
Ooh, that's a good
For now, let's leave aside the Nulls for the second part of this conversation, and focus on the Drakes themselves. So a lot of things happens for Drakes, but for me personally, breaking down what occurred. So the Drake armies assaulted the Nullmoot, and we're talking about all 4 of the major cities with no support from anyone else. Visible landed an army, Manus, Salazar, and Xeris, the exception being the...
So Teslia and Palace.
Sorry. No, Tessia was there too, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 of the cities were there. 1 was not significantly present. But the all of the cities were there, but the reasoning behind their presence for 3 of them was strictly to cripple the Nulls. In whatever fashion they wanted to do it, it was to cripple the Nulls. 1 only came as a presence because they had no choice. The primary focus of was Sire sort of forcing their hand, and they're pushing into the Nullmoot. And the last one, Salazar, was turned around by Ilvris. And under different circumstances, the entire army would have expected to kill the Nulls.
Actually, it's pretty impressive that they followed him when they saw what he was doing.
I was going to mention that's part of the whole Drake discussion. So we had a pretty significant moment where Ilvris is able to lead an army to go against what Drake's wanted. Sire does the same thing, sort of paralleling it in an entirely different way. And, of course, Chaldeon recognized that this was going to happen and sets himself up and decides that I can't stop the Drake cities, which, considering Saris wasn't able to, I'm not surprised. And then he sets up martyrs to ensure that at least there's one city that explicitly supports the Null so that they have somewhere to run after the immediate slaughter, and then the Drakes overrun the Nulls over the whole thing. So there was an implicit agreement between all the Drake cities that, yes, we're going to wipe out the Nulls as a extant group. It was a choice. It was made. It was done. They were going to I don't want to say the words exterminate, but considering Fisible, considering Fisible and Dragiel's intent.
What is this building to? Like where?
I haven't gotten there.
Where are you going?
Just establishing
it, Oshi.
Oh my god! Because oftentimes you're like, "Oh, what? I didn't see that happen." Oh, yeah. So let me establish the facts so we don't have any confusion.
We read the facts.
No, you didn't. Half the time you don't know what's going on. So you just finished the volume, so I'm not gonna go. We've had a huge amount of buildup of the Drakes being explicitly opposed to anyone and everyone that might present any kind of threat, that they're selfish, self-absorbed, that as a society they tend to dismiss everybody else, and that they've declined because of it. And this was supposed to be... did it redeem them? Did it seem like there was any change? Because I feel like the Drakes suffered no consequences for
they've been
all
called
of their
out
actions.
worldwide.
So what? they don't care about the world in the first place. They wouldn't have done this if they did. Fisival actively tried to wipe out the Nulls. Manus took the chance to be like, okay, we're gonna just fuck them too. We're just gonna make sure we do it the right way. And then Xeris goes, yes, we're gonna wipe out the Nulls. And then each of the cities suffer no significant consequences for what they did. In fact, the opposite occurs because the opposite occurs because what happens is Saris gives them information, convinces them to go against the necromancer. There's a lot of positive benefits in terms of material gain because there's less Nulls around. They've crippled 4 significant tribes, destroyed the unity of the Nulls, and ensured that whatever new land suddenly appeared is going to be one that they're going to have to fight over, and they're going to win because they didn't suffer any significant defeat.
I disagree. I disagree. I think that you remember that, and this is an interesting character contrast, actually, right? Saris came back, and his first thing was to warn the Drakes about Azkarash, which is like, dude, Azkarash is small peanuts about the gods. Like, come on. I think the Drakes have forgotten that worldwide powers can get. And remember, this is a plot line that's been going on through Volume 8 that we didn't see finish, right? Magnolia has been the one fighting off all of the other powers that have been getting invested and involved in the Israel plot lines, right? Her whole assassination group was like, nah, get away. And then they've basically kept out interested parties from interfering in Israel for the last several decades. Israel is now on the world stage again. We've got people calling out the Drakes on their actions. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more worldwide investment in Israel, where otherwise it had previously just been ignored. So you're right. I don't think the Drakes thought this through. They're too preoccupied with their little petty squabbles. But I think there will be consequences. We're just going to see them in Volume 9, not here in Volume 8. So they didn't learn anything, but they will in the future, because Drakes have a pettiness problem that they've got to get over. And the only people who have overcome that pettiness problem, honestly, are probably Zell, and not even Sares. Sares was petty even when he came back. He tried to sort of say, I've grown beyond my hoarding years, but all he did was try and benefit the Drakes.
No.
Yeah,
so
all right.
Saris, his goal was pretty simple. I want people to kill the necromancer, and I need to warn somebody about the gods. He didn't
warn anyone about the gods.
No, he did. He did warn Chaldeon. It's implied that he warned Chaldeon. That's the whole point. That he went to Chaldeon and warned him about the gods, and he told Ilvris about the Drake cities, believing that if he has the tools, Chaldeon will ensure that. Yeah, he did the smart thing, which is to go to the one person who would at least think about the bigger picture.
And in the end, he even accepted the Antinian, so give him a little bit of slack.
I mean, Feddo called him out, right? He's like, Drakes are shit. And it's like, yeah, okay. Like, Drakes are shit. They've got some growing to do.
Okay, I have something. Polaric, are you here? Is Polaric in here? No.
Well, Fish wants to talk.
Okay, go ahead.
So going back to the consequences, the Drakes have always been that they squabble, but they've always been united under kind of Manus, the military city. But this is the first time where we actually have Drake City traders openly defying Manus, and the other the Drake cities city-states themselves will never be the same. We have clear lines because of this conflict where they're no longer under Manus. They don't answer to Manus. Festival, Liscor, and Stelia are now forever separated from the other city-states.
Yeah, especially with the dragons. That's a good point. Let's see. Is that all you wanted to say, Fish, or did you have other thoughts?
Yeah. That's good.
Okay,
so let me.
You want to read, or you want me to?
I'll read, and then you. So Edron was calling myself and Oshi out for being wrong about the text. Rat is the text god. Comrade Burr says we're probably going to start to see consequences moving forward. He agrees with me. We haven't seen this chapter because we won't see it this chapter because it's literally just happened. Solar Scriber says, Oji, in response to no city getting consequences, what about Narhavia making a contract with loads of countries to
It
attack
didn't happen.
Xers?
It didn't happen. Yeah,
Right.
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Like nothing
Cool.
happened. They averted it. A sail averted it. What the fuck?
It was
Like,
cool to see his sail though. Like now we
Yeah.
figured out like why he's
That's true.
around. I thought that was fun. Coldbringer brings up my favorite topic of questioning Pirate Abba's naming abilities. What kind of name is Dubite? Anyway,
It's doubt. Let's just go with that.
Dubite. DM Craft says we haven't seen how much Feddo wreck their armies, but that's never the case. We never would be like, oh, there's no more army left. Coldbringer says literal Reddit tier.
The name is Reddit tier.
Oh yeah. That was
Okay.
terrible. Let's see. Renos, you had thoughts, and then Rosie.
Yeah. In talking
And
about
then Oshi.
consequences, there was the whole mention of, hey, these walled cities filed these, long range artillery spells that take like 5 years to charge up. So in the next 5 years, they don't have long range artillery to shoot the ants with.
I'm so sad that they lost their super weapon for 5 years. Boo-hoo.
I mean,
There's a consequence.
That is a serious consequence because that is a deterrent, right? It's basically like, okay, I no longer have the capacity to force project into the highs with mass artillery, which would have been devastating to the Antinium, right? They use a lot of marching tactics, so they no longer have a first strike capability.
Okay.
So I think that's
maybe I misspoke when I said consequences in the right way. There are material consequences. Clearly, Xeris is going to experience some kind of climate change effect. Fisiville lost access to whatever magical draining network they were using to empower themselves, and now they kind of can't be considered a powerhouse because of it or something. It's just it all felt very like, oh, I'm going to take away toys that were already going to be taken away because it's been revealed, so whatever the hell happens is gone,
I think this is a calling out for the Drakes to grow, right? Who was it that had the line of like, stop cowering behind you? I think it was Sarah's. I was insulting her earlier.
Yes.
Right? Sarah's was
Yes.
like, get out of the walled cities, like, come on. So maybe this is like the first, right? One of the things that we saw from the Fae, that we saw the Dead challenge Aaron with, is like, you need to get the species behind you to start fighting off the Seawalkers or gods or whoever. So maybe this is like the first species that we see where it's like, all right, you've been called out on your bullshit. How are you going to handle it? Are you going to grow or are you not?
How many times do they have to be called out?
Oh, it's a work in progress, right? It's never the first time or the second or third.
Sorry, did you have anything more to say, Eris, or Rosie can pick up?
Yeah,
Rosie?
no, I did. So I think there's that, and I also think just we're talking about Hayden Knowles lost so much, and I think they did, but in a way, I think they're also going to be like coming out of this. The ones who survive are going to be very highly leveled, right? They're going to have gotten a lot of levels. I don't think the Drakes are going to get that much because, I mean, for the most part, they're getting their asses kicked. Right?
What levels, though? I mean,
What do you
What
mean?
do you
Like what levels?
Okay, so we'll break it. Actually, that was my second topic. We'll get to it after a
Not
serious
talking
thing.
about like main character levels. It's just in general, right?
Yeah, I'll explain my reasoning behind that later. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into it. But go ahead.
So elites matter a lot in InWorld. So I don't think the Knolls are gonna, are in as bad a position as I guess maybe it seems right now. And I don't think the Drakes are in as good a position as it maybe you feel like they are, because I mean, I don't like. It's like, okay, great. I think Ilverus is maybe the only one who will actually make a difference in their position with maybe finding some of the more of the walled cities. Potentially, although I feel like that's going to take another 5 volumes given the way these things work. But yeah, overall, I don't think, I think Chalion may be, if they lose Chalion, like, where are the Drakes going to be? Not a very good spot.
I mean, speaking of Drakes who've grown, like Ilvris, right, went from being a racist little nutcase to now he's the leader that Magnolia was after with Zell, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Ilvris is the one redeeming quality they have at the moment.
Which is insane because we hated him when we first met him. At least I did.
I mean, we hate a lot of characters when we first met them, right? Leonette was not fun to read. And I don't want to stretch this out too long, but I just don't feel like any of it's like Salazar and Palace have leadership, which I feel like can carry them forth. None of the other walled cities have it. I don't think Manus has it. I don't think Oteslia has it. I definitely don't think Visible has it. And Xeris is just a mess. And I think they've earned everything that's coming to them in terms of anybody harassing them or just their city having, terrible repercussions. They've earned all that. They've been the most aggro city on the map, for the last few volumes.
Okay. Before we move on to Rosie, we're going to do. So we missed a comment from Burv. He says Chaldeon wanted he quotes a passage from the chapter and says Chaldeon wanted a token martyrdom but didn't actually want the slaughter stopped. That is, I pointed that out too. He isn't really great. Sivs here says it wasn't confirmed that Theron told Chaldeon about the gods. We just know that Chaldeon was pale and nervous after a conversation with Ceres, which could easily be explained by Chaldeon finding out that Peril is alive and has had a decade head start on placing puppets into his city, which he's infamous for. Problem with that being Chaldeon pretty much suspected the necromancer was alive, and he figured that was true. We've had implications that Chaldeon knew about this. Solo Scriber says apology. Okay,
that's my topic, Solo Scriber.
Your topic, Mel says once Oteslia tells Manus why they did what they did, they will be forgiven. Hey, we needed to save a Null to save our dragon kid. Get over it. We're friends again. Sure.
They're never going to reveal that secret. That's too much of a weakness.
Yeah, well, it's Oteslia and Manus. They know each other's secret.
But they're not going to give them an out to be able to kill their dragon if Manus decides they don't like Oteslia.
I'm literally, they know about each other's secrets. They trade dragons who visit each other.
Yes, but they don't have if you want to kill my dragon, you can just kill this kid. That's not going to get revealed.
Yeah, but the deal is over. They saved Mersha, so there's literally nothing there.
I thought it was ongoing. I thought it was permanent.
No? Okay. Again, with the whole doesn't read.
I do read Oshi.
Mr. says wasn't the network that broke the intercity teleportation network, which is a huge deal. Yes and no. I think it was a little bit more significant than that because the line was that implied that it was whatever they had buried was the thing that was being used to drain the nulls and provide magic to Visible. I forget the exact wording of the line, but that's what it was. Kel says we've seen that behavior from the walled cities since we first really saw Palace. The Drakes, they're not giving a shit about Lascore being attacked by the mods because they were safe. Sivseer says Nulls just got a huge influx of white Nulls, which is a big deal, fairly decent trade for all the losses. They took Elites-wise, obviously not a good trade, but the long-term gains are great. They're getting mages back. And Jake665 says... 6665 says, look at Manus, their Dragon Keeper speaker, gets trying to pawn off her leadership?
Yeah, make Raph in charge, or maybe Terry.
Yeah. And Mel says finally, yes, the Nulls lost a lot during the battle, but it can be a impede to perform a cultural revival for the Null. It
Impediment.
Could be impetus?
Impediment.
No. Okay. I see it as this. No, it's impetus because he's saying that there is now a reason for there to be a cultural. Yeah. No, you're good. Asteria doesn't know how to read.
It's correcting the grammar. It's impediment. It could be an impediment to performing a cultural revival for the gnolls. I see it as this. This past is a lie, so we need to forgo what tradition that have hurt us and remake ourselves into something new. We need to spread out and try new things, grow to new people like our aunts. Basically, it's like, look, all right, like ditch Israel, let's go to Chandra and try our luck.
Okay. And that should be it. Rosie, we've been having you wait forever, so you're up.
Yeah, wrap us up on this.
Well, it works. That what I was going to say. It kind of ties all this together. I think really what we're going to be looking at is an interesting kind of switching of places, because I think the gnolls are all going to be more brought together, kind of forgetting their tribes, possibly even forgetting the country city affiliations after this tragedy, as they become kind of one with this whole thing that happened, because they did lose a shit ton of gnolls. Their culture got torn apart. So even if a lot end up going to Chandra, I really think we're going to see for them this huge coming together, and maybe, and that's really going to change things for them. But on the other side, we have seen drakes within cities. So I'm pretty sure Salazar is going to be pretty fucking pissed that Ilveris didn't take out the gnolls, because they're all a bunch of racist cucks. And, within the other cities, Autosli is confused, Manus is confused, Chaldeans got almost tried to make his people into martyrs, and ooh. So I really think we're going to see too now that within all the cities there's going to be a lot of strife, because lots of them also run on no power of these power workers and things, and that's going to cause a lot of issues. And beyond that, all of the cities always had this Cold War status of, you can't attack us because we also have the wall tech, and if we fire the wall tech, then that's an issue, because it means we have one less wall tech to fire against the Atinium, and also it'll wipe you out. Well, suddenly none of these walled cities now have this Cold War style wall power. All of them could be sieged, and they don't have that threat of magic to really prevent a full-on siege anymore. So I think we're going to see the drakes actually start to fall apart, and that's going to be a huge issue with maybe Liskor trying to be the new beacon of Drake civilization. But I think it's going to get a lot worse for them, and a lot bloodier, and a lot more of them vying for power or trying to take over each other's cities than it is. I think that's going to happen before it gets better. So that was my piece on the traders.
No, I'd agree with all of that. That's a really nice wrap up. I'm getting called out on my use of impediment, and being told it should be impetus. All right, fair enough. So so the gnolls lost a lot during this battle. This could be what spurs a cultural revolution. I was reading it as the gnolls lost a lot. This would actually stop a cultural revolution. So
yeah, I know. So the Comrade Burv, do we know that the soldier Chaldean tried to martyr survived? I know Ilveris came in with a sealed chair, but do we know they lived? The implication is that Ilveris's charge prevented the death of the martyrs. We have no confirmation beyond that. And Ranar's last comment, Liskor is going to steal a lot of Null capital from the other cities with their liberal policies towards Nulls. I think that wraps up that discussion point. And just, guys, we have no questions in the document. I keep clicking the links and thinking there'll be more, but there's nothing. So fucking get some questions up there, please. And Assyria, you're up.
There's 15 questions. They're all under the second page under participant questions.
Are you freaking kidding me? You have a second page. Why do you have a second page?
Because you split it last time. So I split it again because you wanted me to split it.
Oh, Lord.
The two of you are comedy gold.
You're up. Go for it.
Okay, my favorite characters ever, as everybody well knows or will learn. So, yes, Relt and his daughter, Jacana, coming in on the clutch. I love it. SoloScriber will start us off, right? So this luck daemon that showed up with the gnolls, and people thought that the gnolls should have dealt with it, but we had Relt and Floss offering their kind of thoughts with the swords, and Jacana's like, no sword nonsense, guys. Like, let's kind of, act in judgment. And I think she pulled this off perfectly. I think narratively it made sense. I was so happy to see her using kind of her new role as Arbiter Queen. Even the chorus, it was like, oh, girl, I respect you. I loved it. SoloScriber says, I think Jacana killing the daemon also was thematically appropriate, right? As it was not only passing judgment, as someone else said, but setting them free instead of outright killing them. We also got to see Floss make a stand for Let None Be in Chains that Trey wanted so much. It's a metaphor for the world stage, disapproving of Plain's Eye. Is it external influence to arguably just a null problem? Yes, but people should stand aside and let it solve itself, or intervene themselves like Gnomes and Aaron. I would agree. I don't think the Gnolls could have solved it themselves. The Gnolls just were too caught up in just what betrayal had occurred for their species over so long. Their little luck had been stolen from the entire species. I would say that it took somebody stepping in an outside eye to kind of get the ball rolling. Once the luck daemon was, pulled apart and able to fade, the Gnolls did step in, right? They pulled Floss aside and said, "Forget it. We're gonna go deal with our chief." And Jacana didn't ignore them, right? She called upon the Gnoll chiefs to have a say as to what happened. So I would say that the scene played out really, really well. I liked it quite a lot, but I'm interested in hearing what other people thought about how the luck daemon was dealt with. Do you agree that it was perfect, or it should have been dealt with a different way? So whoever's speaking can talk.
To be honest, I always thought that the whole luck thing was something that I hoped the White Knolls would be able to like do something about it instead somebody else. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So DM Craft is calling out Oshi for failing to read again. So we'll get to severe side in a second. Gridcube says, yeah, the Gnolls dealt with it, right? Jacana just had the skills to actually get the voting going. Jacana proposed the vote, but the king and Gnoll leaders were the ones who
Don't
voted.
forget Scriber's comment at the top.
I already read it. I literally just read it.
Sorry, I missed out. Sorry.
Okay.
I just had
but
stuff.
Thank you for the reminder. It's okay. Thank you for the reminder. Gridcube says it was a correct response. It was something made in secret and was released by popular opinion. So I guess the luck daemon was culture canceled. Yay. Ranner has said that they loved Jacana when she was first introduced. I remember Relt saying she would not be a warrior queen, and he was right. Her ability is to force a vote, and it's very, very cool. Comrade Burr says Jacana got to be the tool that the Gnolls utilized to solve their problem. Tomeo agrees that Jacana was the one that they liked, that Jacana was the one to free the daemon. It gave her appearance purpose. And I think the role, like, Pirates set up these characters and these roles so early on in the chapter. And once again, absolutely love the scene to Relt racing to save his daughter, and then her growth with Fedo, especially. I think it was little moments that just made this chapter, right? Things happen to these characters so early on in Volume 8, and then we start to see them appear, and they make sense. And I'd been complaining not seeing this build kind of throughout the volume, where it's like, okay, this thing happened, but why or where is it going? And there was, like, we saw stuff from early in the volume come into play in the final chapters, and Jacana and Relt is a perfect example of this. Like, I just adore it. I thought that was excellent. And Tomeo's, we finally saw Jacana's capstone skill. Yes, we finally got Jacana's capstone skills. So, absolutely fantastic. Cosmic Chaos says that the Plains Eyes sentenced them to a cursed existence, and they got rejudged. It fit well, even if it wasn't Gnolls taking down the luck daemon directly. Severe wraps us up with, if not for Jacana, they would have tried to kill the daemon. Victims victimizing another victim might be the discussion title. The Gnolls immediately tried to kill it. It would take an outside point of view to see that the daemon was another victim, not just a monster. And I did like, actually, the Jacana Floss playoff against Lynette. Lynette's building her skills and her worldly views, and we got a nod that Floss recognized her skill set and is like, you don't even understand your own class yet. There is so much more to this. And I think we're going to see Lynette. It's a nod to how much Lynette is going to grow in the next volume. I'm so excited to see. Any last thoughts? Yes. Any last thoughts from anybody about this section of the chapter, other than all the love for it?
It wasn't great.
Oshi, you are silenced.
I think Ranors is typing something up, so we'll wait for him.
All right, well, justify your statement. What do you mean it wasn't great?
I mean, Jasena came in, did one thing, and then dropped off. Yay!
That's it. That's that. You got to have reasoning for something. If you're gonna
That's
make a
it.
comment like that, no.
That's it. No, that's exactly what happened. She came in, did one thing, dropped off.
She didn't drop off. She's doing all sorts
Her
of cool epic
character
things.
used to complete a part of the storyline, and
it made sense. And now she's going
it made
back
sense.
to Chandar.
Logically, it made sense. But the arc, okay. Let's divide this into two parts. One is my personal reaction versus what the impression I got was. So my personal reaction was, okay, it happened. Whatever, it's fine. The other side of it was people liked it or didn't like it exclusively based on whether or not they enjoyed the character. That's it. That's what makes me go meh on the entire thing. Because if your decision about whether or not you thought a piece of a scene was enjoyable was if a character was present or not, then it's pretty shallow and as far as how. It's pretty shallow in terms of how the reasoning behind whether or not it felt more like effective as a narrative device, effective as a logical device, or all these things.
Right.
So that's where my meh comes from. You wanted to know why.
No, I appreciate the opinion. I would say that having as much love for the characters that I do, it does not spoil the fact that I think this was a good narrative decision. You've got characters with skills that are coming in, they're using them in a way that makes sense. And I think it is a well-written scene, and she acted as she needed to. Relt was more of a background character, sort of a foil to Floss with an ongoing development between those two, but I think narratively it actually did make sense and it was well written. It's not using a random skill that we've never seen before. It's taking a skill in a class set and working it in where it's like, oh, yeah, like this makes sense. This is really cool to see. How did I not think that this was actually going to happen? And in terms of her dropping off, I mean, we didn't really see a whole lot of the Fedo kind of group until they left the battlefield almost immediately. I think we'll see more of how they left the battlefield and what happened to them after we get Erin kind of and her reactions to being back.
Asteria. Wait, yes. I'm sorry, but I think we're at almost an hour and 20. Do you want to keep going for one more topic and wrap it?
No. I'm gonna wrap up. Solar Scriber thinks that it was effective narratively because it was an arbiter queen that passed judgment, becoming the focus for all the world to pass judgment, both figuratively and more literally with a skill. Mr. Europe disagrees with you. Ranors thought Floss was weird for criticizing Lynette when the dude literally rampages across the continent for the smallest thing. Yodaz thinks that Jakena's skill could have used more detail when it went into effect, and it wasn't clear to them visually what was happening. Overall, the pacing for that section was fast, but they didn't hate it. So, that kind of wraps us up with the Drakes, wraps us up with Relt and Jakena. There's so much more to talk about. We didn't even really get into Terry. Discussion will continue on. But we'll wrap the recording up now. Hopefully you guys can join us next time if you weren't able to make this discussion. There will be another one later this weekend. But overall, positive reactions to the chapter, and we're getting down into the minutia of it. And that wraps up one of the last discussions of Volume 8 from TWI Talks, after chapter discussions. Join us again when we start in on Volume 9.